This is Liverpool, the historic port city in England's northwest. Transworld Sport headed here recently to hang out with a star of the rock world. But we're not referring to someone musical, rather a young woman who excels in the rock climbing world. 22-year-old Shauna Coxsey is the UK's greatest ever competitive climber, and she's currently ranked number 2 in the world in bouldering.
I've kind of progressed through a few different facets of the sport, but bouldering has been my main focus for quite some time now, and it's kind of where I found the most enjoyment and the most love for the sport. I think I'm really lucky to have found a sport that is so broad and so different. I mean, every time I come into a climbing wall, they've changed certain things, so I get so excited when they put new things on the wall, still after 18 years, which is a little bit embarrassing.
Bouldering, in which Shauna excels, is a type of climbing that's undertaken without a rope.
Am I competitive? I guess that's a good question. I think anyone who knows me would say yes, but I would say no, maybe. I don't know. So I guess, yeah, I am competitive, but I like to think in a fun way, maybe. I don't know, maybe my friends would disagree.
Bouldering, both indoor and outdoor, is normally limited to how high the climber ascends. It focuses on individual moves rather than the endurance required in traditional or sport climbing. Shauna, who hails from Runcorn, spends a lot of her time training at the climbing hangar here in Liverpool.
Yeah, I'm really lucky to have this facility to train in. The climbing hangar have supported me for a couple of years. I actually worked here a while ago when I was trying to start out as a professional climber. They supported me from day one. So yeah, and to have all of the training area and to have the fingerboards and then kind of have a bit of free rein to put boulders up on the walls and stuff like that is amazing, and it means that I can really train specifically for competitions.
Over the past 4 years, the Runcorn rocket has enjoyed great success on the competitive stage. She's won various Bouldering World Cup competitions and has starred at high-profile events such as the Adidas Rock Stars. Shauna credits her development as a climber to her trainer and mentor, Mark Glennie.
I would not be where I am without Mark, and he deserves an award for putting up with me. I know I am not easy to work with, and yeah, I will admit that, and my boyfriend would agree, I'm sure.
If there was one thing that stood out when I first met her, it was that kind of absolute love of climbing. I mean, I'm not a big believer that there's that much natural gift. A lot of the time we've obviously got certain attributes that help us towards a kind of sporting performance, but beyond that, there's a lot of just hard work and having been climbing since she was 4 and doing it almost every day.
Bouldering originated in the late 1800s and has long been seen as a training activity for climbers. However, over the last 60 years, it's developed into a sport of its own. Bouldering has traditionally been a male-dominated sport, and it was hard for Shauna when she was first starting out.
It was interesting growing up in a sport where no one's ever done what I wanted to do, so there was no one to go and ask questions to about kind of doing comps professionally. There was no one to say, oh, how do I get a sponsor, how do I facilitate what I want to do, who do I go to for answers? There was no one there, so it's kind of a case of not just opening doors, but kind of trying to create a door to open for myself.
Shauna has been competing since the age of 7, and she now has a wealth of experience to fall back on. Competitive climbing has evolved over the years. At an elite World Cup event, the aim is to climb the routes, or problems as they're known, in the least attempts possible, and to do so against a time limit. The climber who completes as many of the problems set in the least number of attempts wins.
A good competition climber, or a great competition climber, has got to be able to have a huge depth and breadth to their climbing, psychologically and physically, so they've got to be able to deal with big pressure situations and be able to unlock a boulder problem in a sequence and be able to perform it in a very short amount of time.
Doing bouldering competitions, you have to be prepared for so many different elements. that you can't just focus on one thing, you really have to be an incredibly diverse athlete. So that's what I've kind of had to learn through working with Mark and doing the competition.
Her strongest asset is her climbing ability, her actual, her flow and her ability to see boulder problems and just be able to climb them without necessarily needing to break that down in a kind of left, right. She has a very natural, innate kind of climbing sense, and I'd say that's probably her biggest strength.
Shauna's rise to the top has been impressive, but it hasn't been without its problems. Any sport where you push yourself to your limits is bound to result in injury at some point. Last year, a niggling finger injury kept her from performing at her peak, and she also suffered numerous sprains and strains along the way.
Our working relationship with regard to injuries, I guess, is the same as it would be in any sport. Essentially, if you train and push yourself to your limit, there's going to be some element of injury creeping in there, and I think if you approach it as if this is part of that process, we'll try and limit that as much as possible, but when it happens, we go through step by step by step, and at the end, we will get out of that.
In the world of climbing, it's uncommon for athletes to have coaches like Mark, but his knowledge has been invaluable to Shauna. He's a former 800 metres runner with 15 years climbing experience, and he's devised a training regime tailored to Shauna's needs.
I turn up, I do what I'm told, and then I forget about it. When Mark and I first started working together, I wanted to know everything. I wanted to know what I was doing for like months in advance, why I was doing it, like what I was going to get out of it. And then eventually I've just learnt to trust him because he seems to know what he's talking about.
Yellow there's quite good.
Climbing has taken Shauna around the world for both competitions and personal challenges. In the competitive arena, she's finished second overall in the World Cup for the past 2 years and is determined to improve on that in the years to come.
Yeah, I think I'd love to be world champion, and that'd be really cool, and I'll keep training for that for the future, but I don't know how long I'll compete for. I have goals on rock as well, like I'd love to climb harder than I have done on rock, and yeah, I think there's a lot to do in the sport, so I don't think I'll get bored anytime soon anyway, but I don't know what my goals are.
With her talent and ability, the hope in the UK is that Shauna can help to inspire the next generation of British boulderers, climbers who can challenge the current powers of the bouldering world, Japan, Germany and the United States.
I hope that we're at a point that we're going to see some change in climbing. Generally, in a sporting culture, you need some kind of catalyst and something to drive that forward. Shauna's performances in competitions will, I hope, ignite more British competition climbing, high-class performances, and we'll see more and more and more. So, yeah, I hope that there will be a shift across the pond and from Europe to here.